Right across the internet, I could up on your mobile phone, I could up on your social media platform. This is Jambo Radio, www.jamboradio.co.uk. We're multilingual, we're conversational, in the languages where you understand. We are Jambo Radio, inspiring transformation.
Hello, and welcome to TouchPoint with Tayo on Jambo Radio Scotland. I am your host, Tayo Owoeye, and on TouchPoint with Tayo, we discuss things concerning Africa and Africans in diaspora. We educate minds, and we touch on trendy issues. On TouchPoint today, we are still crossing borders. This time around, we're crossing borders to look at the dynamics of parenting in a foreign land as an immigrant, still about the journey of an immigrant. And I have with me in the studio two, powerful guests, amazing people that I know you are going to love listening to the conversation today. And I have with me Omotoke Buluro. Yeah, Esquire. She's a lawyer, a mental advocate, and a digital creator. And don't let me forget, she's also a mother. Nice to meet you, Ma.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And my second guest is a father, an accountant, and a financial advisor. And he is Mr. Olaitan Oladipo. You're welcome to TouchPoint with Tayo, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. You can join the conversation on Jambo Radio Scotland via every of our social media handles. Especially you can watch live on YouTube on Jambo Radio Scotland. Or you can message us on Facebook. You can also watch it on Facebook. Yeah. On Jambo Radio Scotland also. On X, jamboradio.scot. On Instagram, jamboradio.scotland. And you can also email us at info@jamboradio.co.uk. Send us your comments. Send us your questions. We are here to have a great conversation. We are talking about crossing borders, the dynamics of parenting. As usual, we start with statistics because United Nations and International Organization for Migration have shown us that statistics is powerful in migration. And in 2019, you'll be surprised to know that there were an estimate of 272 million international migrants. And in 2020, despite the COVID-19, we had 281 million migrants worldwide. But many of them were parents raising families in different countries from their country of origin. And the question is this: is parenting abroad an easy thing to do? Or is it challenging to raise one's children in one's own country, especially in Africa? I want you to weigh on this. Who wants to go first? Okay, let me have the lawyer go first. It's okay.
Thank you again. So, generally speaking, the older children go, the more challenging it is to raise them because their training needs, becomes different, requires more. So generally, how much more in a different country from how they were raised, different laws, culture, etc. So it is not easy to train kids in a foreign land.
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you, sir.
I know this topic is very, very sensitive, and for me, I would like to add just to what my parent here has just said. It takes an intentional parent to actually be able to parent their child right here in the Western world, knowing that where we come from, we have a lot of support structures in place, but here we have seen that the system only wants you to get, let me use the word, closer to your to your children by, it's like a family unit that they try to practice here. So for me, it's challenging because when you have to juggle a lot of things that has to do with your own personal life, your workspace, coming back to parenting children, handling so many things at the same time, it's really, really challenging. It's quite challenging. And I could say that for us, it has not been an easy ride.
Wow.
But we thank God. We're getting used to it.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely push ahead.
It's not been an easy ride. It's challenging. It's the dynamics are really, really, really an upheaval thing to do. But one of those challenges is that, let's delve into the issue of language. It's been said that there is an estimate of one indigenous language dying in every 2 weeks. And conservative estimates suggest that more than half of the world's language will become extinct by 2100. Sometimes these years are like, you don't know even how to pronounce them. Or let's say 95% of the world's languages may become extinct and seriously endangered by the end of this century. Where I'm going is this: how do we tackle the issue of language at home, especially in an African family setting where we prefer to speak English?
Okay. For me, the way I see it, logically it follows that where you have, maybe, for example, back in Africa, in the community where I live, our language, that's the prevalent language. So they would interact in this language some of the time. Of course, learning is in English. So, but interacting with friends, you hear people saying and speaking it. So at home, we tend to speak the language of their learning, which is English. Coming here, they would interact mostly in English. They would learn in English. So for me, logically, it follows that at home, I should speak more of my language back home. In the home now here, in our personal space, I should speak more of my own mother tongue to them. So that's the logic for me, and it's worked so far, so that they can then understand, they don't forget where they are coming from. Even though it's a struggle because, you're used to speaking to them in their learning language, which was English, but with intentional parenting, the conscious parenting, you know that, okay, you are out to achieve something. Even when I speak English to them, sometimes I catch myself and speaking in Yoruba. There was a day a realization struck me. I was telling my younger daughter in my language, I said, "Bere." She was just looking at me.
Wow.
That was when I woke up to the reality that, what are you doing? And that was even back home.
Wow.
So it became part of a thing to say. Then she was 9. And Bere, she was just looking at me. So that hit home really hard. So it's conscious for me here. We speak more of our dialects here to them when we are around, because I know there is no way they won't be able to speak good English, because they relate with themselves in it, they teach at school in it. So that's the logic for me.
Mr. Olaitan, the issue of even our children, they cannot speak multi-language at home. Sometimes the English they speak at home is different from the English they speak with me.
Exactly.
So how do you deal with those ones?
Okay, first of all, I think coming over here made me to appreciate my local language back home in Africa, and because I've gotten to understand that our language has a deeper meaning or sends a deeper connection when we speak. Back here, when my children speak English and you know, they say this and say that and even go as far as speaking Spanish and say they're teaching them French, I'm happy for them. They're being exposed.
Yeah.
But, you know, it cuts my heart when I try to relate with them in the language I know that I was trained up, that got me some extra, let me put it, give me that wisdom, that extraordinary wisdom,
Some
that
local intelligence.
that we could not, you can't just pick it out from the English.
Yeah.
You know, I find it difficult when I try to relate with them and they are not getting it. So for me in my home, every time they speak to me, I try to relate back to them with the local language.
Yeah.
And so when they're saying, "Daddy, or I'm like, you need to learn your language.
Yeah.
That's where you come from.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you shouldn't speak your English. Yes, we all speak English. In fact, my daughter came in and the first year was she badged an English prize.
Right.
And I was like, they better start speaking the language that we also understand here and want them to know. So it for me, I try to even challenge my wife and ensure that, look, let's try and relate with them. Let's try and relate with them more in the local language so that they don't forget home. So that even when they hear people speaking from where they come from originally, they will be able to relate and be able to understand where they come from. So for me, it's a no-brainer. I ensure that they get to hear that language every day in my home.
I mean, there are some words you say in your local language that drive some the meaning more than when you
Clearer and
use.
faster than.
And it's clear. You don't even have to raise your hand to do anything. By the time you speak it with your facial expression,
you know,
You get the gist faster.
yeah.
You know, our languages goes with expression.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can speak an English language and they will term it as the way it comes out. But you can speak a local language
And it is descriptive.
and it is very descriptive with the facial expression, the tone that it's coming out with. So many things. That's why I said it's infused with a lot of wisdom.
Yeah.
Our language is very weighty. And so you need your children to actually understand those things. And it goes a long way when they grow up. They will get to understand body language. They'll get to understand facial language.
You get to understand. I think
tone
symbols also.
language, and, you know.
And
So-
also, the impact that it would have on them is the connection. Sometimes you see some adults, they feel lost because they don't have any connection to their roots. So I think the importance of speaking your local language to your children is that it also gives them a sense of belonging, that this is where I come from. As an aside, imagine Megan
Yeah.
and the husband. She said, "Oh,
I'm sorry.
yes, and I have a certain percent, about, is it 40%? And
40%.
43%.
Yeah, 43%.
And then she came. I mean, there's this thing about sense of belonging. We should be intentional about not making it lost. It's not a good feeling to see a full adult who feels like there's something missing in me. So we need to be very conscious about ensuring they have a connection to their roots.
I mean, we're still coming back to the issue of identity and some of those belonging things. How do we make sure that our languages do not go into extinction? Especially for the Africans who are around here that, I mean, we speak English almost on a daily basis. Even though sometimes there are some tongues that we may not actually understand. How do we ensure that our language survives even in a foreign land, in our host country?
Okay, for me, I start from my home. I ensure my children don't even greet me back in English. When I come home, I expect them to greet me in our local language.
What of the way they greet too? The way they greet.
Yes.
Is it like standing?
No, they
or
greet with every tradition and culture that goes with that.
every bodily
Everything. So when they
And
come,
I can attest to that. I've met your daughter, and every time.
Alright.
Yeah.
So
I can attest
I
to that.
ensure that even to the last baby in the house, when I come home, they would greet me with that way.
Yeah.
And so it's something I consciously put in them. And so whenever they try and they don't get it, I correct them happily, because right now I'm even happy with the fact that they're taking interest or even trying to speak the language back. And so every moment I have with them, I try to make sure that they get to understand and speak. In fact, I'll give you an example. There was a particular, for some few months now, in the evenings whenever I'm free with my kids, I sit down and I say, yes, I want to speak some certain things, and if they can actually, identify and explain what I've said,
A gift.
I gave them a gift. So they all sit around and they're excited,
Tears by moonlight style.
and I try to chip in some things. And the first two of my kids, they're a bit,
They're big,
grown up, and they could pick some things. But I know the level at which they've known.
Yeah.
So I pitch ahead of that and I give them, and so it racks their brain and they start finding out. And that's the motive I want them to have.
Yeah.
You need to be, you need to try to dig deep. Let them have that consciousness that they want to know this thing. And so that's why I try to put inside them every moment I have with them. I try to throw those things to them. I try to talk to them so that they can actually find out. So if I give the language now, or I speak to them and they don't seem to understand, I try to break it down in pieces for them, so that they can, look at it and try to grasp it together and make something useful out of it.
So just to take the conversation a little bit further, still on the aspect that the only way not to let something die is just to keep doing that thing. It's a no-brainer. So in the spirit of conscious parenting, and for someone who has good interest in making sure you want to keep your children staying connected, you just keep speaking the language howsoever you want to do it. Like I've picked something. Giving an incentive is one of the aspects that would make the children keen about learning. It takes the pressure off them. You're not just saying speak this language. You've attached something to it, and then they want to win the prize. So that's a strategy that also works. But generally, just keep speaking the language. One of the things that works for us, and in other aspects of training them, is also values. We tell them, look, every family have their values. So it's just one of the values that in this house, in as much as we are within the space, speak our local. And that's the way to sustain our culture, our language, so it doesn't die.
Can you hear? Keep speaking the language. Don't let it stop. Don't forget your roots. Just like that proverb that says that a river that forgets its source quickly dries out. Yeah. In terms of forgetting our sources, I'd love us to delve into the issue of parenting style. It's a major issue. Considering our conventional parenting styles in Africa, we see all of those kids on YouTube that talks of African mothers and the actions that follows African mothers. What are some of the challenges that you think migrant families or migrant parents do face living abroad in terms of parenting style?
Okay. In terms of parenting style, typical African, I would say, because we still have a percentage of parents who had the awareness and the exposure enough not to be like a typical African authoritative parents, who were actually positive in their parenting style. parenting style have impact on the mental well-being of our children. You can't take that away because your style will determine the kind of anxiety, the depression, and everything they have. So generally speaking, if you're an authoritarian parent, a permissive parent, and a parent who is authoritative, the kind of anxiety your children have, depression and everything is heightened, excuse me. So, but that's the general thing that most people know. That's authoritarian, but it really does not work. So there is one thing about all of these issues of life. The more we know, the awareness, the more intentional, and then you know that what works is just to stay positive. It's a mix of everything. When to step this down, where to bring this up. So the challenge most parents face here is that what many people know is different, because by law you do not even have a choice. There are some things, some parenting things you would want to do, you're used to doing, you're disempowered doing them. So generally in life, we must be willing to learn, unlearn, and relearn. It's a growth process. The fact that we are parent does not mean we are perfect. Some things are generally eye-openers that, I've been doing this wrong. If you sit down, if you don't want to this is how I was raised, I must raise my children this way. Why don't you, look at everything, evaluate, and look at how some things actually, they do not work. You can be authoritative, but what is the impact on your children?
But just, if we look back into our own generation, that worked for us. That built the resilience.
That's a big lie.
Okay.
So many adults are wounded. They are seeking healing. Look at the way they relate with you. Some people relate irrationally. It's all parenting issue. We keep saying, look at us, because we don't interrogate things. Many adults are wounded.
Wow.
That's why the world is not a good place.
I think Mr. Olaitan wants to say something.
Yeah.
If you look at it back home when we were growing up, we had most of us had parents that were very, very authoritative. And do you know that it never stopped us from even becoming more stern, doing those things that they say we shouldn't do?
Like a bad boy.
And so it was until we started becoming of age, we started understanding the protection, so to say, that our parents were trying to do and the way they were trying to drive us through. So if you look at it here, they've made it in a more simplified way, and they feel that you going through that way wouldn't solve problems, because you need to put yourself in their shoes to be able to understand how they're going, or what they're feeling, or what they're going through. And so most of the time, I think this place has actually helped my temper, let me put it that way, in handling my children.
You have used your hand. You have put your hand inside the pocket.
So whenever I want to go through the old way that I was trained, I get to a stage and I'm like, no, cool it down, because you need to. In those days, our parents don't want to know what you're going through. They want you to do what they want to do.
You go through
and they
what
tell you
they want you to go through.
And they tell you you can stand on top of a 20-story building, and they are seeing far more than you that are on the story building, and it's the truth, because they've gone through life more than you. But the way they try to pass the message over to us might not just go down with our generation. Let me put it that way. The new generations now, the kids that we have now, they're kids that want to go through a lot of things. And I'll tell them, most times, experiential knowledge really, really, really plays a vital role in raising children. Some of them need to go through some experiences to be able to understand what is out there. But we as parents, because of our guidance, we don't want them to actually, face those things that are out there. And that's why we are trying to be there in every step of the way. But, sometimes we just have to let go and put them through the proper way that we feel that they'll be able to understand.
We'll come back to the issue of parenting style. It's something we need to explore more after the break.
Need security? Call Alpha One Plus Limited, a strategic security resourcing platform that connects you with licensed security personnel. We cater for our clients' security needs, from manned guarding, door supervision, event security, all the way up to close personal protection. Alpha One Plus Limited, your one-stop security solution. Call now at 44-074-2526-7909 or send us an email on info@alphaoneplus.com.
Established in 2006 as one of Glasgow's original mobile massage therapists, we deliver high-quality treatments with the ambition to forge permanent relations with clientele. We specialise in on-site massage, a type of treatment that has been specifically designed to complement the convenience and availability of massage at work. It is performed with the use of a specialist mobile chair, without the use of oils or the need to remove clothing. At Massage & Glow, we believe that massage should be a part of your everyday lifestyle. Regular massage not only relieves stress and tension, but also stimulates blood circulation, can help with pain management, and promotes good mental health. A must for your busy schedule. Various holistic therapies available. Contact us now on 07530 905 152 for your mobile massage therapist.
Ushawahi tamani kuwa mtangazaji wa redio? Hakuna shida. Umewahi kuwa na show yako redioni? Hakuna shida. Unataka kuwa na tabia ya vyombo vya habari? Hakuna shida. Je, ulitaka kuwa na sauti na maoni yako kusikilizwa na watazamaji? Hakuna shida. Una masuala unayodhani yanapaswa kuwa kwenye vyombo vya habari? Sawa, hakuna shida. Je, una wasiwasi kwamba hauna imani kuzungumza kwenye vyombo vya habari? Hakuna shida. Je, vyombo vya habari vinakuwakilisha maoni yako juu ya masuala yanayokuhusu binafsi? Hakuna shida. Jiunge Jambo Radio. Kwa kujitolea, utafunzwa, utaungwa mkono na nafasi ya kuwa na kipindi chako. Piga simu 0745 990 6822 ama tovuti ya www.jamboradio.co.uk.
Right across the internet, akoda panya mobile phone, akoda panya social media platform. This is Jambo Radio, www.jamboradio.co.uk. We're multilingual, we're conversational, in the languages where you understand. We are Jambo Radio, inspiring transformation.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying tuned. It's still TouchPoint with Tayo, and I still have my guests in the house. It's been a wonderful time with them here, live from the Jambo Radio Scotland studio in the heart of Glasgow. And Omotoke Buluro, a lawyer, a mental health advocate, and a digital creator, and also a mother, still in the house. And Mr. Olaitan Oladipo, a father, an accountant, and a financial advisor, is still here with me. And if you're just joining us, you can still be part of this conversation. You can watch live on YouTube and on Jambo Radio Scotland. And if you want to message us, get on your keypads and type your message on Facebook, Jambo Radio Scotland, on X, which is formerly called Twitter, at jamboradio.scot, and on Instagram at jamboradio.scotland. In case you want to use email, info@jamboradio.co.uk. Send us your comments, send us your questions. We are here to get the conversation going. It's hot. It's still about crossing borders, the dynamics of parenting. We were talking about parenting style, and I would love to go straight to my lawyer friend. Navigating differences in parenting style. There are laws, but I mean, there are some places in Africa that even parents are law unto the law of child rights. Mm-hmm. How do we deal with it here? Knowing very well where we're coming from, that those laws does not hold water, so to say, seemingly does not hold water. How do we navigate it?
Okay, thank you. I mentioned earlier that in the journey of progress, you must be willing to learn, unlearn, and relearn. Laws are made to be abide by. Laws are made for the citizenry, for guidance and all. So when you've moved to the diaspora, to a different land, especially, using where we are, for example, there are laws, and these laws, one thing we must learn is that they are not there for fun. They are backed up by sanctions. We're not abide by. So while we are coming, we have a culture of not keeping to the child's rights. We must know that you must be law abiding. So, and then when you look at the law, it's for the protection of the children. So why not? Look at the law. The children have their right. And these are their entitlements. So the child right here, you have to follow. And it's just basically to protect them. Don't abuse them. There are basic needs that they need to be given. If you've given birth to them, then they should be provided by those. So we must be ready to abide by the laws of the land, because at the end of the day, they are there to protect our children.
Mr. Oladipo, want to weigh in on that?
Well, she said most of it. Coming here, you'd presume that, yes, you would want to train your child the way that you feel is best for you. But if you look at it, they've put in some strains of, a set of rules, let me put it that way, that would also guide you and ensure that you do not abuse those children. And for people like us that are coming from a home or back home where we are the sole lawmakers, let me put it that way, of whatever goes on for our children, we come here and we are gained to see a different way of life, or a different way that is expected of us to actually train our children. So some goes down well with us, some wouldn't go. We would be like, no, this won't go. But these things have consequences when you break them. And that's the only thing that they could use to checkmate us. And so if you look at it on the long run, it's a win-win, both for you as parents and also for the children. So I think I would also agree to what she had said concerning that when you come over here, you just have to agree with what they have put on ground as the law of the land, and then see how you can walk around it to favor you and your family, and putting your family as.
Let me just digress. I know you will have something to say before we go to the issue of identity and belongings. Don't you think that children, being aware of these laws, take advantage of them? And sometimes I've heard children reporting their parents. Let me do the devil's advocate. How come should a child report the parent
To the police.
to the police?
Well, children generally would test you anywhere, even back home. There was a time I created content on how children would test your emotional intelligence. If you're a parent who is big on growth, you would know that the older you go in this parenting journey, you also must let go of some things. And part of the things I personally have picked on is developing my emotional intelligence. Because also I know I have the obligation to also, I want to raise a child who is responsible for our action. I also take responsibility. So I find myself calling my child and say, I'm sorry. So if I don't want to keep saying I'm sorry, I must learn emotional intelligence so that I don't keep apologizing. So they would generally test you. It doesn't matter the zone where you are. how much more when they have the law, and the law
backing them up.
Yes. So it's not like in back home we don't have the law. It's just that there are no sanctions. But this law out there, because generally the law seeks to protect the weak. Because children are at the mercy of their parents. There we see, I mean, the world is a global place. We see issues of parents abusing their children, all types of abuse. So if you look at the law itself as a positive tool, if you do not look at it as something against you, we are seeking to achieve the same thing.
Yeah.
So while I know that children would, even if you're not careful as parents, they want to play mommy against daddy.
Yeah.
How much when they know
They do
that?
play it.
They do. How
If
much
you're not
when they
careful.
know- So that's why parents who would like, let's have the same front. Don't let them come to daddy and daddy saying something. When they come,
You tell
check,
us at the same time.
at least I know that normally like, okay, did you, because I know that they are trying to play a game there. So we come up with a front. So they take advantage of the law. But as someone who, don't forget, we are talking about, particularly I'm talking about intentional parenting. Once you don't want, you know how to abuse your children. So for me, it's really not it's not a big thing for me. So
Let's talk about identity and belonging. How do migrant families address question of identity and belonging with their children, given the multicultural background that they are from, especially in a host country?
All right. First and foremost, when discussing with my children, I try to create time, at least twice in a week, to have certain discussions with them, so that I can know their challenges. And when they come home and tell me, oh, we had this or this happened in school, and I try to let them understand where we come from, first of all, and say, see, we are from Africa. We are guided and grew up with certain traditions and cultures that is expected of us to imbibe and to always showcase. And so I know it's pretty hard because you see a lot of your peers, let me put it that way, because we're in an environment where peer pressures
So much.
is very alarming. The environment as well, so
It's
many
pressure
things that they're going through a lot. And that's why, as a parent, you should always ensure that you speak to them at all times, letting them know where they come from, letting them to understand that these are the things that is expected of you. You're in this place for a particular point in time, and you're expected to learn this, you're expected to learn that. So when you come here, don't forget where you come from. Always stand by your identity. Know that, yes, this is how we do things, where we come from, and know that it has been tested over years. It didn't just start. And so when you're here, don't throw that away. Always make sure that you put that at the back of your hand and don't use it to play.
I'll still also toe the line of the law a bit in this. How do immigrant families navigate the experience of social inclusion, social exclusion, and as well as the need for support, knowing very well where we're coming from? We have seemingly enormous support back at home, but we are here now. How do you think immigrant families can navigate that experiences?
Okay, support, I would say you mean the general that says it takes a family, it takes a whole village to raise a child. Okay, so here you can't afford to be an uninvolved parent. You cannot afford it. You have to be involved. So back home we had a village raising your children because you're among people with similar interests, probably values, the language and everything. But here you have yourself, you have your family. So if you're uninvolved, the children, don't forget that the primary duty as a parent is to train. Well, people may say maybe it's a contextual issue. Raising children, for me, we don't raise children because they are not chicken. You train them in the way they should go. So you have to be involved.
So the proper word should be
Training, yes.
not raise.
No, they are not. You can't raise someone who has emotions, life. They are not robots. They are not things that they have their own emotion, and rightly so. All the expressions you have as an adult, they do have theirs, and they're entitled to it. So you can't use the word raise. You train children. So
I'm trying to figure out
internalize it.
that train and raise in my own local language.
Okay.
And raise. Yeah. You can continue.
Except you mind the local language. I was going to say the local language of mine, of train.
Yeah, which is
Tom.
Yeah.
So, so you can't afford to be, you cannot afford to be absent. You understand? So you have to be there, and everything takes. If you look at everything we have to do here, especially as a new immigrant settling in the craziness of it all, it's daunting. But you have to be ready. It's only if you do not care. But if you do, which I believe is the number one reason, if you have, out of 10, if you ask parents, why did you move? We would say for the children. So besides the social life, you want them to have good education. Who they are is very important. So you have to be committed to it, to be very present. If you're present, dad is playing his role, mom is playing his role. It can't be perfect, but at the end of the day, those values will not be lost out on the children. It won't.
In a statement, that question, I traveled out, I crossed borders because of the children. Do you think it's a right? I sincerely want your answer. Okay. Do you think it's a right reason to move because of my children?
Well, we have to put it in context.
Okay.
If you look at where you're coming from, because the journeys are not the same. So I'm not going to dismiss it, that it's not a right reason. For some, it's actually a genuine reason for them to move. It depends on what it is that they are dealing with. So I'm not going to dismiss it that is it right. Okay. It depends on who is talking, because I do not know their experience.
Mr. Olaitan.
There's one adage that we usually say back home. We would say we always pray that our children grows much more than us. And so if you look at it, migrating down to a Western world has very much advantages as against what we do back home. We always have this idea that when you are raised in the Western, you are open to a lot of opportunities, not just within that region, but in other regions, because they expect you to have a wider exposure. And so first things first, parents always want those children to have that exposure so that they can be in the limelight. They can be out there. They can know what's
greater
going
choices in life.
So bringing them here was like, yes,
Pedestal.
It's a stepping stone for you to have that.
Exactly.
More of being a global citizen.
Yes. We can't afford to keep on playing it local.
So if I may ask, how do families do we still use all those cultural traditions, celebrations back at home to reinforce our children's sense of identity, of who they are?
Yes. Yes, for me, I think for every time that we are having a function or a cultural, so to say, event at home, I would call home, if possible, ensure I do a video call. I'm so fortunate that I have children that have at least seen those things for a particular number of years before being moved over here. So they still have those memories in their mind. And so when those events come, I try to call home and try to connect with them and try to see how they're doing the event and how it's being done and how fun it is to be there and all of that. So it also makes them feel like they're still there, but in a far place. So, but every time, I'm sure, if given the opportunity, if I ask them that would they like to go back whenever any of these events is happening, I know I can be sure of 100%
They want to go back.
of them, you know.
I take the conversation further. So I think it depends on how you as a parent was raised. For example, I was not raised with so much cultural festivities. I was not. Even my grandma, I never knew her to any village. She grew up in Lagos, like almost all her life.
Wow.
So besides the normal...
Must have been the first generation of people in Lagos.
well, the Williams. So I didn't experience much of cultural festivities. Then don't forget education too.
Yeah.
So even the ones that I know, I want to first of all look at it. Is it repugnant to natural justice, equity, and good conscience? Is it
a lawyer now, Avi?
So there are so many cultural things that I know that even the law has taken off.
Yeah.
Though some, depending on how cultural a family is, they still have some things they do. So I think it would also depend on. I didn't have that kind of much of a bringing, so I'm unable to pass it on cultural wise to them.
Wow. So as we wrap up, I want us to touch points on the issue of resilience and adaptability. I mean, before we look at some lessons that we can learn from each other. And so how can migrant parents foster resilience and adaptability in their children as they navigate the host country?
Okay. One thing I know that children are, first, they are quite impressionable. They want to see these things play out before their eyes. And in fact, the situation even fits in. As new parents who are trying to navigate their path to in a foreign land, their children are looking at you. Are you handling the difficulties of trying to settle, the job you're trying to... They know you, who you were before. Now they can see, they've never experienced it. Daddy's struggling, mommy's struggling, because they came in and you were already probably settled.
Yeah.
They knew the good life. But now they're seeing you in a difficult position. How are you handling it? So if you, and trust me, I won't lie to you, I'm not saying it's going to be, it's not easy. Forget, I'm not saying it's not easy.
Yes,
but how they see you, if you're always negative, if you're putting up, you want to give up, that's what they are picking. Unintentionally, subconsciously. So how to foster resilience, you also must display it. And then you must also be open. I operate an open door policy. It's okay to feel these things. That's not what resilience is not saying blow out, or positivity is not saying deny the obvious. No, you can admit it, put it in context, and know that, look, giving up is not an option. But you look at how to manage, and so let them see you display resilience. Let them see how you tackle challenges. And then when you speak to them about it, it's easier for them to relate. Not when you are being negative and I don't want to go to.
So just be vulnerable, something like that.
With them, you have to, by all means, you have to let your children, for them to be fully developed emotionally, you have to be vulnerable with your children. You have to.
Mr. Adiko, what are the strategies that we can, if we were to list strategies to use that we can use to have a positive outlook and a sense of optimism in the face of adversity for our children, what are those things that you can list? 1, 2,
Okay, for me, I try to inculcate some certain habits. One of them is whenever I get home, I leave whatever I have gone through the whole day behind me. Because I've noticed that if you come in with the mental stress that you're you faced out there and you come into the home, you would pass it over. You would just be dishing each and every one that comes your way, part of the pains or whatever you're going through. So at the entrance of my door, I tried to take a deep breath. And I said, I'm coming home to meet my family, and
this is home.
This is home.
It's no work.
So, and as I'm coming in, when I look at their faces, there's this joy that comes inside me. And so I try to tell myself, you're at that stage where you need to always talk to these children. You're at that stage where you need to always show them that this is life. This is how you should go. So every time I get a bit emotion and everything, I try to go away from them. But I show it to them when I'm speaking to them. I try to let them know that, look, life is not as easy as the way people show it out there. You're going to be faced with a lot of things.
It's not the social media life.
It's not about, illusions and what they see on air and all of that. So I try to let them know that, look, I give them examples. I say, look, back home, remember this, remember that. Look at it here, but it's not stagnant.
Yeah.
There's always a stage for everything. So we're going to be moving on and on until we get to that perfect light.
I think our moonlight stories are probably changing from the 𝗧cie 𝗂𝗰𝗵𝗇 to our real life this time around. So there is need for us to keep talking, having conversation with our children almost on a daily basis, and let them see us being vulnerable, but also see the strength that we have in terms of overcoming those things. As we wrap up, looking back, what would you say you have learned as a parent, living abroad, parenting abroad? If there is one thing you have learned, what would be that thing?
Okay, so the one thing I've learned, or what I've doubled, because in this age and era, I think most of us had the opportunity, and when we're starting to say, oh, I want to be a conscious parent, it's just the level of growth for me that has picked up, because you can't afford to slack. You have to be there, because what you're not doing, if you're not careful, peer pressure is putting it. It's just to consciously, just be one step ahead.
Someone is there to
be one step ahead.
I want to say someone is there to raise them. Someone is there to train them. If you are not training them,
because the exposure is there. There are some topics you don't want to say, okay, it's now time to raise this topic with my child. Now, my child is telling you, I know. So just be one step ahead. Right. Be always on your toes. It's not going to go on forever.
Get the information that you
every day goes away. By a team so it's just going to be a time you have learned to just be dedicated, stay grounded.
But I think quite a number of them are saying they want to have their own house.
So values inculcate if there's anything I'm hammering on, which is one of the things that has helped, is to say, look, we all have values. Yeah. This is our house, these are our values. And that has helped, because for me as a parent, that's what has stayed with me.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Oladipo?
Yeah, for me, I always want to live every day happy. And I made up my mind that whatever it is, I want to stay happy with these children, especially in their growing up days. I try to speak with them. I try to let them understand that this is what life is all about. And so for every day, I want to enjoy it as if it's my last, the way they would say it. And so every opportunity I have to say something to them, to let them understand something, I try to do it. Yeah. I try to let them understand it's not easy. It's not easy. If anyone tells you it's easy out there, they pick it up, they pick money on the streets. I'm sure you've walked on the streets. You've not come home telling me you've seen 20 pounds or anything on the road. That's to let you know that your parents as well are struggling and trying to make sure that you get the best out of life. So
striving to make their best out.
Don't
frustrate the efforts.
Don't just go all the way out and do your best.
if there will be a pattern shot, usually I started something last week, a pattern shot, and I'll call this one Toke's words.
Okay.
What will be your words? Start getting yours down because it will be Olaitan speaks.
So my words would be, as much as possible, it's not an easy thing to do. Parenting is a daunting task. Just give it your best shot. Do everything you can, and just trust. Just trust the process.
Just trust.
Do your best. But one thing I know is that at the end of the day, they don't forget. They do not.
Do your best.
Yes.
Do your best. Go through the process. Trust the process. Olaitan speaks.
I would say, live your life like it's the last. See those children and let that joy that radiates from within you show every moment you have the opportunity to show it to them. They won't forget it. And so any time you have the chance to tell them what it takes, or what is out there, or what they need to know, what they need to do, don't hesitate. Do not hesitate. They have opportunities right here, and they should harness it. They should find every means to know what is good, what is right, and they should go forth and do the right thing.
Thank you. Harness every opportunity. Trust the process. My guests have said it all. And here we come to the end of TouchPoint with Tayo this week. And I'd love to thank my guest, Omotoke Buluro, a lawyer you've just shown the stuff you've made of in terms of the legal luminary that you are. Thank you so much for coming. Mr. Olaitan Oladipo, thank you so much for coming. I really have to thank you. You've been so amazing, and the insight in which you have given today in terms of dynamics of parenting, crossing borders in foreign land has been an amazing, and the conversation continues on our every social media platform. And thanks to my TouchPoint team, my producers in the studio. I thank 𝗧cie 𝗂𝗰𝗵𝗣cie, Baron Otuegon, I call him Dr. Baron, and Bamdele, and my boss here, Mr. George Tar, and to my backroom family, my researchers and social media team. Plenty of love to you guys. And that's it until next week, ladies and gentlemen. And until then, remember these words. Life journey unfolds uniquely. Run your race to attract grace. For it is only within the race that grace finds its way. Thank you. I've been your host. I'm Tayo Owoeye. Join me next week for another exciting and trendy issue. Until then, I wish you a happy night rest. Good night.